In today's video, I would like to introduce you to a new approach to your career. I call it career experiments. So what it means is, instead of approaching your career as a linear progression of climbing the corporate ladder, you can approach your career as a series of experiments through which you learn about yourself and what you like and don't like to do, and also gain access to new and different knowledge. So I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new that you haven't thought about before. When I first moved to Brazil, I heard a lot of comments on how courageous I were, especially being a woman. And I always thought it was quite strange that people felt that way about my move because I didn't feel there was anything courageous about it. I was more afraid, for example, walking at night in Center City, Philadelphia, because we had several assaults while I was studying at Wharton. So this was, for me, more of an experiment. I knew that I was going with a pretty good package. I was going to get temporary housing and some assistance to live there and figure out things. I didn't know any Portuguese at all. So from past experience, I know that the best way to learn a language is actually living in the country. So that would be a great opportunity to learn Portuguese and maybe travel a little bit and see what happens. And I always knew that if it didn't work out, I could always come back to the US, go back to what I was doing before, and actually have international experience to show on my resume. I still don't know if that's the best approach to my career, but at the time it was just a fun opportunity to explore. And of course, the experience turned out to be different from what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting much, so that was much easier to digest. And I would say that being an expat is quite difficult because you're trying to figure out your new job, but you're also trying to figure out living in a new place. But the end result is that you learn so much about yourself and how people think and how you react to different situations that you get a sort of double experience in the same amount of time. So I guess the most important question on your mind when you're watching this is, did I end up going to Carnival? So yes, I did. I participated in the parade and I even got pictures to prove it. So it was very hot and hard to hold the big hat on the top, but the experience was very exciting and totally worth it. My most recent career experience was working for a tech startup in San Francisco. And only after I got there and started working, I found out that now startups are the hottest thing around, and that's what all the cool kids want to do and work for. So I actually had a very different agenda. I wanted to explore living in the West Coast, and I was kind of curious about how does a small company work versus very large companies that I worked for before. So my expectations were completely different, and I ended up learning a lot of things that I never thought I would learn. First of all, I became a lot more tech savvy in my day-to-day because in San Francisco you have an app basically for everything. Like you want a massage, you have an app. You want to order food, you have an app for it. You want to take a car, you have an app. You want to buy something, you have an app. Any question you may have, there's probably an app for it. So the other thing that I learned that was very interesting is that you don't really need whole big departments to get stuff done. So in my previous life, whenever I had to create something, I would call the communications department, spend about 2 months negotiating a project plan, developing materials and doing everything. And at the end, maybe getting a great or not result. And in the startup, I just had to learn how to use Photoshop and how to tell stories and how to create my own stuff within 1 or 2 days. So this was pretty amazing to see the difference. Also, I learned that you don't need HR department because you have an app for it to manage payroll. And actually the person that was doing the HR stuff was the CTO, who was also the salesperson and everything else that you could imagine because there's not enough people to get all the work done. So these were very interesting insights that I would have never gotten if I hadn't gone to San Francisco. So what I would like to encourage you to do is try to think of your career as an experiment, especially if you don't know what you want to do and what you're passionate about, which is, I believe, the majority of the people. And those who do, You're very lucky. Congrats to you. So what I would like to reinforce is that you don't have to be courageous to do experiments with your career. There are many things you can do in your day-to-day to explore different opportunities. So for example, you could ask for a rotation in a different department that has a new set of expertise for you. Or if you want to be a little bit more sophisticated, you can try to propose your own project that will involve that department. Another thing you could do is, just in the same way that people do community service, you can volunteer to work in a startup. So there are always ways to find new and interesting startups, but on the startup side, they're always looking for people who are willing to do work for free. And this is a great opportunity to try to see if this is something that makes sense to you, or you see yourself working on one, or perhaps starting one in the future. So the message I would like to leave with you today is the following. There's nothing courageous about career experiments. There are two things that are involved in those. One is curiosity, and another one is risk management. So why risk management, I say? Well, if you already had a successful career up to now, you have all that track record on your resume and in the relationships that you've built so far. So taking a leap to try something new can only add to your experience, and if you don't like it, you can always go back to what you've been doing before. But I have to warn you that probably you will not go back to what you've been doing before. So I encourage you to experiment more, and until next time.